Hey, what's going on, you guys? It's your boy, your host with the most, AB the Baby. Welcome back to another YouTube video. If you guys are new, please consider subscribing and turning on notification bell so you don't miss a future video. And today I'm going to be giving you guys my brutally honest review on Evil Dead Burn, released July 10th, 2026. I recently went to see this movie by myself in theaters, which I thought this film was good. If you guys like the Evil Dead franchise or the IP as a whole, you guys are going to like this film. Now, I didn't think it was as good as Evil Dead Rise or Evil Dead 2013 or even the original first two Evil Dead movies. Now, I thought this film was like at least better than Army of Darkness. Now, I'm not going to say that I think Army of Darkness is a bad Evil Dead film, because Evil Dead Burn here proves that Evil Dead is the most consistent horror movie franchise that doesn't have a bad movie. There's not yet a single bad movie in the Evil Dead franchise. I'm going to be taking both my parents to go see this film very soon when they get back from their trip, because I recently got them on an Evil Dead movie kick by showing my dad and my mom the two modern Evil Dead movies that are already out. I showed them Evil Dead 2013 and Evil Dead Rise. My dad thinks they're a bit much, but overall they're pretty good. Now, my dad's seen like the original trilogy of Evil Dead, while my mom's only seen the original film. But I'm gonna get them all caught up, and I may even start showing them the Ash vs. Evil Dead show. Now, granted, while this film was a good Evil Dead film, I have some critiques on it. By the way, I should probably say spoiler alert right here in effect. I should probably say that the formula for Evil Dead Burn is very, very similar to the Evil Dead 2, and Evil Dead 2013, with the whole isolated house in the woods. Now, granted, Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2013, yeah, it was a cabin in the woods. I get that, but it just seems very reminiscent to that. Now, when it comes to like how the Deadite possessions start going to like all the other characters that we're following in this movie, they change it up a little bit. There's no Necronomicon in this movie. It literally picks up right after Evil Dead Rise, and it kind of shows how like the film series plans on connecting itself to any past and future Evil Dead films, which is what I like about it, because Evil Dead kind of suffers from like continuity errors when they forget about a plot point they introduce in one movie and abandon it the next and change up stuff. They're notorious for that, but I like what they're doing here. Now, as for like all the characters that are in this film, we got Alice, the main character, who I think is like the most fleshed out of all. Then we got Joseph, who you guys all like to say that he's like a pathetic man in horror. But dude, give him a break, because this film tackles the topic of family abuse. We even got Alice, who's being abused physically by her husband, Will, and like how that affects her, and that's why I feel like she's the most fleshed out character and one of the more interesting leads of Evil Dead. Joseph was clearly abused by his father, Edgar. It wasn't like fully stated in the film, but it was heavily implied with how Edgar spoke to him, how he presented himself. You guys want to like say that Joseph is a pathetic man in horror and deserves everything that happened to him just because he dipped on his girlfriend while she was getting murdered by his possessed dad. Now, you guys can't look at me in the eye and tell me that you guys wouldn't do the same shit if you were being abused by a parent, they got possessed and started attacking your girlfriend or friend, that you wouldn't just dip if you had the opportunity to. Now, did he feel bad about it? Sure. But like, you guys gotta give him a break. He's a victim of abuse, which is one of my hot takes I think you guys are gonna heavily disagree with me on about Joseph as a character. Now, I feel like they underdeveloped Joseph, though, with how, like, they just presented him as, like, a coward, and he didn't really have a moment to say, hey, I'm not gonna be afraid anymore. I mean, he kind of had that when he started stabbing his dad with the pen later in the film near the end. I guess that's just the point of his character. He's just kind of a wuss because of him being a product of family abuse, parental abuse, or child abuse. Sorry, I'm struggling talking today. Then we got Thea, who is Joseph's girlfriend. We don't really know crap about her, but she was a very interesting and very terrifying Deadite. Then we got Susan, which is the mother, who is, apart from Alice, one of the more other very interesting characters we've had, because family is super important to her, because her dad, which is Joseph and Will's grandfather, which is a very prominent figure in the Evil Dead Burn movie, because he was part of the Circle of Wise Men, which was introduced in the earlier Evil Dead films, where they're like an organization that are there to like stop the Deadites. And Joseph's like looking through his research, trying to write a book about it, because Joseph wants to be a writer, and he decides he wants to write a book about his grandfather's research on the Deadites. And Susan's very resentful towards her father for leaving her with her mother, who is deteriorating mentally, and her sick sister. And she wanted to be an artist at one point, but she had to like abandon that so she could fully take care of her family, because she started to believe that family was the most important thing. And another interesting detail about her character was that she purposely overlooked Alice's abuse she suffered from life because she couldn't face the reality that her son was just not a good guy. Then we got Edgar, who is one of the main Deadites, who I thought was a very intimidating Deadite because at one point he kills the family dog, which honestly I feel like that wasn't needed, but it did introduce something that Evil Dead's never done before with Deadites possessing animals. And that brings into one of my other complaints about the movie is that they didn't execute the Deadite dog very well. You only really had a couple scenes where the dog did anything and the dog was just put down instantly by Alice both times. I mean, you had another moment with Edgar where he blew his brains out multiple different times and kind of was just aura farming, which I found to be pretty funny. I mean, I just thought after he did it once, it was gonna end there, but it just kept going, which I found pretty funny. And then we got Polly, the grandmother with dementia, who was just the comic relief of the film because she was accusing Thea of stealing her money and crap. And she mentions how she has money hidden under her mattress, and it's literally the funniest crap ever. There's a lot of funny dialogue and one-liners from the grandmother. Another comment on the film I would have to make is that this one isn't necessarily a bad one, and to be fair, this one may not even be universally agreed upon by people who watch this film. I feel like the gore in this film was very toned down compared to the other films. You know, people wanted to say that Evil Dead Burn was more brutal and more graphic than Evil Dead 2013, but I still think Evil Dead 2013 was still the more brutal and more unforgiving one. I feel like this film relied more on suspense and a few separate scenes where the characters are communicating to each other through their facial expressions. In this one scene after Thea escapes the basement after Polly lets her out, Joseph and Alice are looking for Thea, and they're just they're not saying a word. They're just Joseph's grabbing a lamp to defend himself, and they're looking at each other, kind of just communicating where the hell did she go? Now, I feel like that was executed brilliantly, but I feel like the real reason I feel like the gore was toned down a lot was that I'm just desensitized to Evil Dead at this point. I've been watching the movie since I was a kid. And plus, I'm the type of guy who watches Terrifier religiously. I'm already a borderline psychopath. Now, there were a couple scenes that still got me. I mean, it wasn't as bad as the scalping scene from Evil Dead Rise, or the part where the Deadite in Evil Dead 2013 busts Eric's hand split with a crowbar, or even the scene where Mia from Evil Dead 2013 licks the box cutter. Hey guys, Editing AB, and of course I cannot forget to mention the other graphic scenes from other films that really got to me, like the cheese grater scene from Evil Dead Rise, or the bathroom scene from Evil Dead 2013 where Olivia's carving her face open and then attacks Eric. Those scenes are really crazy. These scenes weren't as bad, but there's still a couple scenes in this film that made me cringe a bit. When Polly, when she gets possessed, stabs and deafens Alice's right ear with a pen. And then later when she's taking Susan to the bathroom to get the pen out of her ear, she has to pull the broken piece out of her ear. And then of course we also had the scene where Joseph lands on a dishwasher door with the knives and forks poking up, which you should never do. Even though people claim that it gets the silverware washed faster, that's a safety hazard. Just wash it facing down. Joseph falls back, has his possessed girlfriend Thea on top of him, just driving the silverware deeper into his back. I hated that scene, even though it was already shown in the trailer. But then there's a scene where Joseph bashes Thea's head in with the dishwasher door. This scene was originally supposed to be longer, and if it didn't get cut the way it did, the film was going to get an NC-17 rating, which Sebastian Banachek, the director of this film, by the way, who also made Infested, you know, that spider horror movie, which I can't really sit through that because that film was just, I hate bugs. Sebastian Banachek didn't want an NC-17 rating. He just wanted to kind of keep it at a rated R rating, so he had to trim down the scene. But I'm just still surprised to how that scene could have been worse, because I've already found the scene pretty graphic enough as it is, but I cannot wait for a longer director's cut where it reveals the extra bits that he had to cut off. As for the Deadites in this movie, they weren't really funny. They didn't really have a lot of one-liners. I mean, they did stop and torment their victims, like when Thea drank candle wax, but they were literally just like business first, and they were more animalistic and more brutal than any other Deadite that I have like seen from any of the other modern Evil Dead films. Now, they are very reminiscent to the Evil Dead 2013 films with how the Deadites look. These ones just behave differently to me anyway. Another thing I did like about this film was that the camera work was incredible. Like, had a lot of unique camera shots, especially like the scene where Thea, after she drank the candle wax, lunged to attack Susan, and Alice and Joseph in this one-shot scene from above them had to like pull Thea off and throw her into the basement, which I found to be a very good sequence overall. And of course, I like the camera filters. Now, the vibes of this film, they're definitely trying to make it remind you of Evil Dead 2013. Now, another complaint I had with this movie is that, for a plot point here, that the Deadites are attacking this family because they know that they have a item that can counter them and defeat them. And they want to keep it to themselves so that no one can stop them and they can keep spreading the evil possession all over the world, which I guess is what they're trying to lead into. It's the Kandarian dagger, but they redesigned it and made it look like this pitiful dagger design. Like, I hated it. It was like the director was just laughing in our face about that, because there is this one dagger that you do see in the movie where Alice is trying to stop a possessed Joseph near the final climax of the film. It looks like the Kandarian dagger from the original Evil Dead trilogy, but when she stabs it in Joseph, it doesn't stop him and he just is like, wrong dagger. Like, the director was laughing in our face about that crap. It pissed me off. And then when it showed what the dagger was like, I have never wanted to scream in rage in a movie theater in all my life. That pissed me off so bad. Now, the last thing I did not really care for was the ending, which was because it wasn't that it felt unneeded. Now, I feel like the ending was needed in a narrative sense. So at the end, after Alice defeats all the Deadites, she faces off with her dead, possessed husband, which is now a burnt, walking corpse. I would have been fine with this if they didn't like make the walking corpse itself look like a bad CGI effect. Like, I'm very hard on CGI, and I felt like they used just too much CGI on this final design of the final boss, if you will. I feel like, you know, they should have like taken notes from like the Twisted Childhood Universe's film of Pinocchio, for example, and seeing how like they used a very realistic animatronic for all practical effects in that movie, which I have to praise that. They could have done something similar, like, I don't know, make some kind of animatronic so it's not like fully CGI. I mean, either that or you guys could have made the CGI more believable. Because, you know, there's a couple cases where I don't notice CGI. In Evil Dead Rise, I didn't really get to spot any of the CGI until it was like pointed out to me. Now, as for like the narrative aspect of it, I found it good because Alice pretty much not only was like breaking free from the abusive family that she desperately tried to get away from, she also had to like fully break free from Will. And I found it cool, like, how instead of like overusing the, oh look, it's a girl with a chainsaw, they had her like use a rotary saw when she was at the family vacation home. There wasn't even a shotgun, which I found like a taste of fresh air that they were using new weapons for the Evil Dead lead to use. Now, it makes you think at first she is going to pull down the chainsaw because there is a chainsaw by the item she was pulling, but she uses a jackhammer to kill Will. But then Will, of course, isn't dead from this, and she has to like stab him with the Kandarian dagger and then crush his skull in. And in like the mid-credit scene, you find out that Polly escaped the burning house, you know, the grandmother with dementia, and then she passes on the Deadite possession to another passerby on the road. In the post-credit scene, we have the crematorium manager who was directing Will's funeral at the beginning of the film bring her daughter to work because one of the workers was killed by Will, sort of off-screen, sort of not, in front of Edgar right as he passed the possession to Edgar. Since he wasn't there anymore, she had to cover for him until she got a new worker, and so she had to bring her daughter in to work. And her daughter sees all these ashes that were left behind by people that didn't come back to get them. One of which being Ellie Bixler, you know, the Deadite mommy from Evil Dead Rise. And after she messes with the urn, she sees a motherly figure, which is Elle. Ellie from Evil Dead Rise in the mirror, telling her not to be afraid and coaxing her to, I guess, touch the mirror and let her out. But then Deadite Mommy appears, looks at her pretty fondly, but then has that sudden look of rage in her and then snaps the child's neck and says, "Mommy's back." Now, I think the reason that she kind of hesitated before killing the little girl was because a little bit of humanity she has from Ellie looked at this girl like her daughter Cassie, which you saw in Evil Dead Rise, and now she's mad that Beth, her sister, took Cassie after defeating her. And I guess this is kind of leading to the idea of a possible sequel where we may see what Beth and Cassie and Beth's daughter are doing. Like, that would be interesting to see. Now, I did hear from somebody who's describing and explaining how, like, the post-credit scene of Evil Dead Burn makes sense on how, like, Deadites work from a mirror dimension and have ways of coming back, even if the body's destroyed. Now, that person could probably explain it better, but I've seen that floating around through Instagram. Yeah, overall, I thought the film was good. I mean, wasn't better or as good as Evil Dead Rise, but it was still good. It was an Evil Dead film. Now, that's my thoughts on the movie. I would give this film a solid 8 out of 10. But yeah, that's my review. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment down below, and please subscribe and turn on notification bell so you don't miss a future video. This has been your boy, Aby, out. Peace out, Rainbow Trots, and remember, keep on and geek on, bitches.